Hello, everybody. It's me, Mac, here again with another episode of Draft of the Day. It's been a while since I've put one of these out, so finally getting back into the swing of things. Now that things have settled down a bit with the world's drafting meta and we've seen what's what and what teams are prioritizing and how things are shaping up on the world's patch, I thought I'd make an episode and talk a little bit about the H2K versus EDG tiebreaker and what we can learn from that about the way the current meta is shaped out. A lot of people talking about how this meta is currently very focused on mid lane priority. So we're going to have a look at what that means and what you can gain by having a mid priority focused draft. So if we start off looking at H2K versus EDG in the pick ban phase, obviously this video is about the draft, so we're going to be starting with that. We'll look at the bans and the picks first, talk a bit about the team comps, and then as always go through about 10 minutes of gameplay to see what exactly I mean when I talk about mid lane focus and how the draft has influenced that specific factor. So, bans from H2K, so far we've got two from each team, are very standard. Tahm Kench and Alistar are both pretty standard target bans against EDG. Tahm is simply just a very strong champion, and Alistar great at engaging onto range support squishy champions. The only other one really that you can make those all-in plays on is Braum. So Tahm Kench and Alistar deny a lot of that, and those two champions specifically are very good at punishing low mobility comps such as kind of Namis and Caitlyn's and things like that. So that's something to consider when you look at what they're going to be, when you think about what they're aiming to pick in this sense. The bans from EDG, the Gnar ban is a bit odd. It could mean that they are simply just afraid of Odoamne's Gnar, which seems unlikely to me, or it could be that they're planning on picking something specific in which Gnar is a strong counter to, something like a Poppy, perhaps, but honestly that ban seems like an odd one to me. The Nidalee is fairly explanatory. She's 100% pick ban this world. You don't want to give Jankos Nidalee. He's very, very good at that champion. So if we start speeding through things from here, the next ban to come out from H2K is Rise, which you'd think is odd seeing as Ryu is very competent on that champion. In fairness, so is Pawn. But what that indicates is that at this stage of the game, both Syndra and Rise are up. So they're saying, if you don't ban Syndra, then we're going to first pick it, and you don't have the Rise to pick into it. So we'll see what EDG decide to ban after that. If we keep skipping through this, it will pop up eventually. They take a while on this last ban. Oh, whoops. I messed that one up. Okay, so Kennen. So the top lane is relatively pinched here. Again, kind of an odd ban. You'd expect them to ban out Syndra, but the fact that they don't ban out Syndra means that they must have an answer that they're comfortable playing into it. So H2K go and pick that one up first. Straight away, Syndra, obviously a very powerful champ, really strong in the laning phase, really fits H2K's style of play. And there's now no Rise kind of counter, or not counter, but there's no Rise pick available into the Syndra now. So H2K is going to be pretty happy with this one. Now this first rotation from EDG, I really don't like. If we keep panning through this, if I set this to play, 4 seconds left, and they decide to go with Nami and Lee Sin. Now this rotation I don't like for a number of reasons. So whenever you think about drafting and picking your first rotation, you have to think, what power picks are we trading and what power picks are they getting? Like, we want to get the strongest two champions we can possibly get in our first two picks that then take them away from them. But if you think about it, so starting off with the Nami, the two kind of archetypical range supports in this meta at the moment are Nami and Karma, and they do basically the same job. What Nami has a slight sustain advantage and is a bit better initiating. Karma synergizes a bit better with picks like Olaf and Sivir, but realistically they do the same thing. They're really good in lane, and yeah, that's about it. They kind of do a lot of things relatively well. They'll give you sustain advantage, poke advantage, good into melee matchups, but both of those supports are still on the table right now. So if you pick Nami, they're just going to take Karma. They don't really mind. And you know that H2K wants to do that because this is the type of style that they play. They very often play for lanes. Keeping in mind that H2K is a team that is renowned for being fantastic in the laning phase, but being less decisive in the late game, you'd think that maybe you'd want to take away some of the draft options for them to exhibit that laning prowess and really dominate in lanes. But this Nami pick doesn't do any of that. So you can take any other champion here and you're going to get one of either Nami or Karma unless they go for a Karma pick, which here they can't flex the Karma to mid lane and then take support Nami to deny you both of them because they've already locked Syndra. So the Nami pick is kind of pointless here. Considering that the top lane is really, really squeezed, you'd expect maybe them to take a top lane pick here if there is that priority pick that they really want to get, which is why they ban out Gnar and Kennen. There's also not that much pressure on the jungle. Maybe Lee Sin is just their preferred jungler, but a lot of junglers are up here. There's no pressure on the jungle pool apart from the Nidalee ban, so they don't 100% need to take a jungler here either. So this first rotation doesn't really give them much in the way of advantages. Yeah, they're decent champions, but it doesn't actually secure them much. So if we carry on speeding through this, this is the really bad rotation. If you look at just these first 3 champions from H2K, and I don't mean bad rotation from H2K, this is absolutely perfect. This is they've first rotated Caitlyn at multiple opportunities, and this is why the first rotation from EDG is so questionable, because it allows H2K to just do this. Okay, we'll take Karma into your Nami, and we'll take Caitlyn, who's our absolute favourite AD carry, and allows us to play the exact style that we like to play, which is lane bullies. And we like to play Caitlyn, we like to push towers, we like to push all 3 lanes at the same time, and we're just going to crush you in lane because we have Forgiven. So they've given them that option of just playing for lane, which is H2K's favourite style of playing. So this, to me, it's either kind of disrespect or it's lack of preparation, but they played I think they played Caitlyn Nami or Caitlyn Karma in their last match against EDG, which they still won that one. So it seems really odd to me that they would let them get through with this and just be okay with it. So yeah, I don't really like that first rotation because it leads to this. It leads to a free Caitlyn pick. So you then get an Aurelion Soul counter. This is the counter that they think is going to be the one to beat Syndra. This is why they're okay with leaving Syndra up. They think Aurelion Soul is going to be great. They take Jhin there as well. Nothing necessarily wrong with the Jhin pick, although given what is left up on the table, and you have a Karma, if we wait until they pick their next picks, you've already taken away 2 top laners in the Kennen and Gnar. The next one is going to be either a Poppy or a Rumble, realistically. Could also be Jace. That would fit well with this comp. And the junglers, if we look at the fact that they have a Karma on their team, it could be Elise. They could go for a full pick. They could go for Olaf. They could go for Rek'Sai. A lot of these picks very good at getting onto Jhin. So maybe I would have preferred an Ezreal there, ultimately. And Ezreal, gives you a lot of utility in terms of the slows, and they stacks really nicely with an Aurelion Soul pick. So yeah, there's the Olaf, straight into the Jhin pick. Stop him from sitting there in his ulti. Same for the Rumble. And now they have this weird situation where, because they didn't prioritize a top laner earlier, H2K gets kind of the only good top laner left, and actually the Poppy into Rumble matchup is horrible. It's a really, really bad matchup, and if we think about the history of the tournament so far, Mouse has been a big weak spot for EDG. So this is really questionable to me, why you would give Odoamne a champion, ban 2 top lane champions out, then not pick your top laner, give Odoamne a champion that he's really comfortable on and that has now no real bad matchups left into it. So yeah, that's it's not a bad team comp, but I don't see any point of the game at which EDG is necessarily stronger than H2K. H2K has a comp which excels in the laning phase. Syndra, one of the best 2v2 mid laners there is. Rumble, extremely good at pushing. Caitlyn and Karma, fantastic at pushing, very safe, really good bully lane. And Olaf excels when he's ahead. So if H2K can get this lane phase rolling, it's going to be a really, really tough time for EDG. And they don't have much in the way of the ability to stop that snowball, apart from the Aurelion Soul being able to potentially outpressure Syndra. So this is definitely the matchup to watch in this game and why it's so key. So EDG ends up going with an Echo. Overall, their comp has some nice parts to it. If you think about Nami, Aurelion, Jhin, and Echo, those champions have a lot of ability to get really, really good zone control. So it's going to be really easy to hit the Jhin bullets and the parallel convergence if Nami and Aurelion are already on top of them, slowing them and tidal waving, or vice versa. It's going to be really easy to chain all of those longer duration or harder to hit skill shots together. So it is a nice comp from that respect, but their lanes are so weak compared to H2K's, and H2K is going to have at least 2 pushing lanes in the side lanes, and then the third one is the one where it really matters. So let's skip into game now and get a grasp of what we think goes on in the laning phase. So skipping on ahead, waiting for this to buffer. Here we go. So if I move this forward a little bit, what I want to focus on in particular is the way that Jankos and Ryu play the early game in terms of the jungle pathing and the amount of pressure they put on mid lane. So we've heard a lot about this tournament, how mid lane is the super important lane and how this meta is a mid-centric meta, and that's why Syndra and Aurelion Sol are so common in this meta, because the Syndra is able to bully really hard in mid and like has a lot of safety in terms of good wave clear, is able to get kill pressure, is able to roam really well, has great burst, kind of overpowered as well. Her numbers are just a bit silly, especially with those W buffs. And Aurelion, this is why we see a lot of Aurelion, because he's able to push waves. And in a meta where standard lanes are pretty much enforced because there's no lane swapping, it's all about having lane pressure so that you can roam out and do other things in your side lanes, which is what we're going to see this game. So, looking at the way the junglers have started, you can see that Jankos has actually gone all the way down to his Raptor camp, or his red buff now, because he didn't get Raptors because Aurelion Sol took it with that nice little cheese strat, and actually left his Gromp just to get a faster clear down to the bottom side. Now, Pawn is able to shove up like this because he's Aurelion Sol, and he wants to pressure as many minion waves into Ryu's tower as possible, try and make him CS, try and play in that really aggro way. Clearlove has pathed top, which is going to be important coming up. All of these lanes from H2K, especially the Rumble, is very susceptible to early ganks because he tends to push really, really hard. Now, Pawn makes a bit of a mistake here. He's already seen Olaf on the bottom side going over his ward, and he pushes up really far in lane and ends up losing both summoners, and that's really key. Jankos comes straight in for that gank, and now he is not going to be able to play in that super aggressive position that he was before. He's forced back because he's really low, and if you look at Jankos on the map now, he immediately goes into the bottom side jungle and places a ward, and that gives him a lot of crucial information. It gives him the knowledge that Lee Sin has not cleared towards this side of the map. Lee Sin has started top, and he's then gone top as well, like into Jankos' jungle. He's not reached that side of the map yet. So that gives Odoamne the knowledge to play safe, and it gives him the knowledge to avoid these ganks that come in from Clearlove. Clearlove's going to go for a top gank now. Ryu overstays there a little bit and gets caught window shopping, but it's not a big deal. What's important, if you look at the map now, we see Clearlove, and Jankos has now an option. He can go mid and hold the wave, or he can go into the enemy jungle and take 2, potentially 3 camps because he sees Clearlove here. But normally you'd expect a jungler to go and take all the camps and have a really big advantage, but Jankos knows that mid lane pressure is so important in this matchup to stop that Aurelion Sol roaming, and he opts to go all the way into mid lane, and now Pawn, because he doesn't have any summoners, cannot stay in this lane, and Jankos is able to push out. So Pawn can't get an advantageous back off against Ryu, can't get that lane pressure, can't get back into lane earlier, and can't then use that pressure to roam and affect the side lanes. And what that does is, if you look at the bottom lane right now, because of the mid lane pressure being against Pawn, because he overextended, because he got ganked by Jankos, because he blew summoners, because he's not been able to go back. Oops, let me close that Skype notification. Sorry about that. Because of all those factors, and because of that mid lane pressure spilling over into Jankos being able to track the jungler by getting wards into the enemy jungle safely because there's no mid lane pressure, he has then been able to give that information to his side lane so that Odoamne could avoid a gank without even blowing a flash, 2 ganks so far, and so that the bottom lane can push up in this super aggressive style, which is exactly what Caitlyn wants to do to get chip damage onto towers. So now he knows that Lee Sin pretty much has to go bot because that's the only place he has camps up on the map. So again, the whole of H2K can play accordingly. They can play as risky as they want on the top side. Odoamne can push this wave into Mouse and play really aggressively. He's already got a really big CS lead because they know that Clearlove has to be bot. Something that is quite key, if we look at the map now, is the pink ward that's being placed down by Ryu in that side bush, and that allows Jankos to come in and punish even harder. Now this is unfortunate, the fact that he misses these axes here, but it is a good gank time, and again, it doesn't matter that they don't get the kill, because it just means that they have even more pressure in the mid lane. This Aurelion is being denied the opportunity to roam. Lee Sin is being pulled mid because he has to answer to these, or Aurelion's going to get dived by the Syndra Olaf combo, which is a really, really strong ganking combo. And it just means that they have vision of the jungler, they know where he is. The side lanes can play really, really aggressive and play that H2K pushing style that they like to play. They can play with Forgiven up in Deft and Mako's face. They can play the Rumble pushing into the Mouse as often as they like. And now you see that this is something that H2K does in both their games against DDG this week, they put 2 pink wards in the river, and that just guarantees that safety of being able to come in and threaten ganks onto pawn. So, pawn now does not have flash, so again, he's being forced to play very passive, and Ryu is able to push up like this because he has flash advantage and deny the ability of pawn to go anywhere and really utilise this Aurelian pick. And now he has to go back again. And that is the value of those pink wards and those early ganks coming in, and that mid lane focus and the ability to track the enemy jungler because they don't have pressure. So Jankos' actions this game have really summed up to a mid lane where Aurelian, who's supposed to be the kind of neutralising factor into Syndra that's going to stop her from bullying lanes, has just been completely disabled, and the side lanes from H2K have been enabled. You've got massive CS leads already for the 6-minute mark on Odoamne and Forgiven, because Clear Love's been a complete non-factor just because of this mid lane focus. So that's why we're seeing so much focus on the mid lane. Also really important to note is the ward that has just been dropped in the middle lane. You can just see Aurelian Soul passing it now. It's just been pinged out on the map. And that is so, again, that you can track the mid laner to see when he's going to roam. So Ryu has to back here. He gets a decent back in. He gets his Lost Chapter. That's all good. But Aurelian's able to push in a wave. But because of that ward that Syndra drops, he's seen on a roam up top, and this is essentially more wasted time for EDG. Odoamne still has his flash, has a ward there, can just pull back and play safe, and H2K's bottom lane can still push on towers. And now Pawn decides to run past this ward, and the second he sees this, Jankos sees another opportunity to push out the mid laner and actually get a kill on him because his flash is so close to coming off of cooldown. And yeah, there's a free kill, there's some more mid pressure for you H2K, and Aurelian, who is supposed to be, bullying out the mid laner and forcing Ryu into really unfavourable backs, has completely failed in that regard. Ryu's got mid lane pressure. He's got a CS lead. He's making Aurelian miss waves. He's got gank pressure now because Aurelian is off the map. So again, you're going to see him push another wave into the middle lane, get mid lane priority, and then they're going to make a play onto the bottom lane, which, the tower has been getting chunked this whole time. Forgiven and Vanda have been chunking out Mako and Deft. They've been playing up in their faces and aggressive. And they see this coming because Ryu has to move down past kind of from the tower in middle lane. So Pawn manages to respond to this. Ryu did place a ward up in the jungle, but Aurelian Soul's not spotted on this, so this is pretty unfortunate. You could say it's mispositioning from Ryu, but something else really key happens here is that because they had mid lane pressure, and because Mouse now uses his teleport to get down to the bottom lane, and they knew that this was coming to the bottom lane, they knew that EDG were going to have to respond there with numbers, that Odoamne is allowed to push up and play aggressive on the top lane, and now he's got a 30 CS advantage. So even though they lost out on that fight because of the pressure they were allowed to put out, they don't get punished too hard for it. Odoamne now has teleport advantage, and that's going to be really key, because he doesn't have to burn his teleport. He can just get a really solid advantage in his lane. Now, because Ryu died there and Aurelian was allowed to push in a wave, this is EDG's opportunity to clear out some of the vision in the river bushes and to try and take this dragon. But Pawn is super low on mana, and as we just talked about, Odoamne still has TP. Mouse has gone back, which is a big mistake. If they're going to take that, then he needs to stay, because the team really needs him here. And then this happens. So they get some free kills, they're going to get an Infernal Drake off of it, and now the damage is starting to seep through. I mean, this is a very strong early game from H2K, and even though they lost that kill down there, they got a lot of chunk damage onto the tower, they got TP advantage, they made a good pressure play off of that, and they get mid lane pressure again. So if we skip this forwards just a little bit past this replay. Now this is a really nice play from EDG. They do make a really nice response here, in that because the bottom lane has recalled, they pull everyone over to the mid lane, and again, looking at the mid lane as both of their flashes are down, and that allows this play to happen. So you can see that in this game, pretty much all of the plays that have made anything happen on the map, anything work or fail, all the ganks top, the invades, the side lane dives, anything else that has happened on the map has been based around this mid lane pressure. Unfortunately, because Mouse came down, and because he lost so many CS earlier making those TP plays, and then Rumble was still able to capitalise and get an Infernal Drake and get a kill on the back end of it, the damage is pretty much done by this point. It's kind of too late for EDG to start turning because they've had no mid lane pressure from the whole of this game. And Aurelion Sol is a champion that wants to snowball early and try and really, really impact the map early. Otherwise, he's going to get outscaled. And H2K's comp, as we talked about, is also one that excels when it's ahead. Caitlyn is fantastic at sieging down towers when she's ahead. Olaf is going to make Jhin completely useless when he's ahead of Jhin. Rumble is going to be ridiculously good at mid-game team fighting and at just being a lane bully when he's, even a small margin ahead. So, yeah. Because H2K has had so much mid lane pressure this whole game, because of the way that Jankos has been pressuring around the mid lane and using that to track the jungler, they've pretty much had free reign to play that H2K pushing on all three lanes style, and that has led to this, where they basically just lose their side lane towers, and now H2K is in a super prime position to push out for the rest of this game. As you see Jankos here coming in to take this last tower, you see how low it is, and you see the CS differences across the map. It's going to be a really, really hard game for EDG to come back into, and ultimately they don't, because you've just lost First Blood Tower and on the tower. That's like, what, nearly 3,000 gold coming off the back of that. So I hope that was clear, and I hope that I've not rambled on too much and taken too long, and I hope you will understand and now see why it's so important in this meta to have mid lane pressure and why it's important to have pushing lanes, because it allows you to do things like establish vision control, put pink wards down in the river, track the jungler, track the enemy's movements, track the mid laner's movements, force him to not be able to roam and to not make these snowbally plays, which the champions that are currently in the meta are so, like Aurelion Sol, are so famous for doing. Okay, so that is going to be all from me today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this didn't drag on too long, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. See you next time.